PR LBL Brand Summit 2017.
Carrying on the tradition of Sunil started his presentation with a grave, so I have a graveyard. And I think a poignant question which it's easy to sort of both brush it off or start writing the obituary of our own job descriptions. So I thought, let's actually use, and since you have, as Lakshman threatened earlier today, 9 hours of this to go, I'm going to try and not give you any data. I'm not going to give you any examples from the conference cliches like Apple and Uber and Nike and so on and so forth. What I thought might be a good way to sort of get your minds and our minds oriented for the next 8 hours and 30 minutes is to actually start with a bit of a perspective on what's the subject matter that we're dealing with and where do we stand today. So, like any methodical problem solver, I grew up as a planner, so that part of me refuses to die. We started by literally thinking about, is this really a new question? So the post-marketing era, I must concede, is a term even I didn't find anywhere else. So my congratulations on coming up with that. But having said that, is the entire reluctance towards what's the value marketers create, is that really a new subject? So you start looking back in history and guess what? A man raised this question in the previous century, the previous millennium. So don't worry, nothing new. This is David Packard. He founded Hewlett Packard, and he was the first prominent business leader to literally come forward and question what the hell is marketing all about. And if it's really that important, is marketers really the best people to be taking those decisions? So all good and well, the 40, 50 years of Hewlett Packard and their competitors many, many years later actually saw the surge of the best golden marketing era, the Madison Avenue era of Mad Men and so on and so forth. And all was hunky-dory until we got to the end of the century. And then there's a man who started it all over again. You all know Jack Trout, right? He wrote a piece in 2010 talking about something on the same lines and literally restarted this debate all over again. And by that time, I have to admit, in those 60-odd years between these two gentlemen saying these things, a lot changed around our environment, and today the pace of change is accelerating so well, and you know that as well as I do, is change looks like it's going to be the only constant for us to deal with. But let me just give you a very small flavor of what this man has started. So these are the kind of stories you start reading over and over and over again. So one starts to really wonder, is marketing really that worthless? And looking at all of these, and look, this is the tip of the iceberg I'm showing you. Is marketing a worthless profession, or is marketeer a worthless species? Because the public opinion seems to be somewhere between the two. And here's my view on it. Because the work we do, the work all of you do, you put out something on a social media app today, and everybody from your CEO to your mother-in-law has an opinion on it. Have you ever thought about how would it be in the life of a CFO if every time in the corridor in the office somebody came and started giving him his or her thoughts about, you know, in the derivatives market, we should be looking at financial restructuring of our company this way. It doesn't really happen. But you know what? I saw your ad last night. You should have done this better. Sounds familiar? And today, when the shelf life of marketing programs is getting shorter and shorter, each brand is literally custom mass producing hundreds of messages on a daily basis, and everybody has an opinion on it. So I thought, and then of course, what accentuates this similarity is the entire conversation about how technology is changing our lives. You know, that's a very a digital immigrant view of digital technology. I think the era and the part of the world that we live in, we are in the most populous, the most developing, and the youngest part of the world. And for most of our region, digital and technology is not something our millennials are adapting to. They were born in this era. So it's for the gray-haired people like me that this seems like a rapid pace of change which you're trying to contend with. Our audience is actually far more evolved than that. So here's what I thought, and this is honestly what technology has done to a marketer's job description. On one hand, we have theory telling us and hundreds of means to now be able to reach my consumer on a one-on-one environment. But if you put all of them together, what's also equally relevant is that unlike the mass media or the broadcast or the mass marketing era, while technology has allowed us to have a one-on-one conversation literally with millions of people at the same time, it's also put simultaneously all these layers between the company and the consumer. So it's a challenge that a marketer has to deal with. And therefore, I thought, let me just set the tone of the day by sharing with you the 4 things that I have learned, and this is probably the perspective which you might find useful. As you look at a lot of examples, data, and cases that you'll see for the rest of the day, in how I feel the role of a marketer needs to evolve, because the market already has. So here's my first learning, that I think as CMOs, I've seen too many of my colleagues, friends, and at times even myself, we just get too obsessed with solving marketing problems. And I think it's time we realize that businesses do not have marketing problems, businesses have business problems. There are business opportunities and there are business problems, and I think the moment a CMO is able to reboot her mind to how can marketing contribute to this business challenge, we might find ourselves doing ourselves and our companies a lot more favors. And on this point, I actually want to share with you an example. This is a client of ours we work with in India called Unilever. And the large, complex expanse of India. So while we talk about 250 million smartphone users, which is threatening to touch 300 million by the end of next year, we also have a large part of our country where geographical reach of mass media is a problem, where geographical reach of distribution channels is a problem. So Unilever is the largest consumer goods company in the country, and yet there were pockets in the country where our distribution in the last 60 years of existence had not reached. And therefore the challenge was, how do we take, and because people in these regions had not really heard or understood of our brands, there was a lot of pressure in the marketplace with spurious goods trickling into these regions and literally imposter brands behaving like market leaders. So we said that here we are, a 50-year-old company where most of our products are household names, and yet there's a part of India that's never even heard of us. Now, how do we solve that problem? So here's something that we did.
While a small part of the world is worried about the next big thing after Netflix, the rest of the world has some bigger technological issues, like the 130 million people in India who go without electricity on an average of 8 hours a day, every day. They live in a permanent blackout from the world. Bihar and Jharkhand gave us no way to communicate with them, except for one thing, their mobile phones. And in Bihar and Jharkhand, 65% of the population has one. We transformed this rudimentary piece of technology they already have into the only constant and reliable medium of entertainment in town. The Kankajura station, a radio station in a mobile phone that works very simply. You make a missed call to a number, and a few seconds later you receive a call back, with 15 minutes of free entertainment.
बिजली नहीं आने के बावजूद भी हमारे पास अगर मोबाइल है तो हम इसे एंटरटेन कर सकते हैं।
चुटकुले भी आ रहा था उसमें, तो शाहरुख खान का भी कुछ उसमें आया।
मैंने एक दिन में 4-5 बार कॉल किया।
Music, news, series, jokes, and, of course, advertising from all our brands.
एक्सेल बार अब लग साबुन में छुपी जिंक माउथ वॉश के साथ। आप लिसनिंग क्रीम पर लेकिन दाम अलग।
because with 130 million inhabitants, this was an important market for Unilever's growth in India. During the first weeks, we received 150,000 calls each day. In just 6 months, the Kankajura station is already the largest media channel in Bihar and Jharkhand. With 24 million calls and 8 million unique users. The Kankajura station, a new media that brought rural India out of the media darkness and got it connected to the world.
कानखजूरा स्टेशन 1830,123
कानखजूरा स्टेशन 1830,123.
So here's the point of this. We speak about how we solve a marketing problem in terms of reach, but here was literally a program. And there's been a lot of debate about, is this a marketing campaign? Is this a content marketing initiative? Is this a program to engage with audiences? You know what? It's all of them. We literally ended up creating a medium that's now one of the largest media, bigger than radio in some of these regions, and it solves a real business problem. I'm told I've taken more than my time, so I'm going to skip the next example, but here's the second thing which I want to share with you. You know, the environment is too complicated. And the touchpoint explosion is only going to make it more complicated than it already is. Stop getting worried about keeping up with what's the next big thing. Let's focus on, if the environment is complicated, can I make my brand story simple? And you'll hear this over and over again, but I think it's important that while retaining simplicity, we remain authentic and humble because people have as much of a voice as we do. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip my next example. And here's the third thing which I want you to think about. We live in a transparent environment. People are watching what's happening inside your company. People have access to the same information that you do. There is nothing called boardroom conversation and market conversation. It's all out there in the open. And therefore, it's very, very important to only be a company that's willing to practice what you're going to preach as a brand. So it can destroy the fortunes of your company if you get it wrong, but it can also earn you significant love from people if you get it right. I'm going to share with you an example of something we recently did in Europe. Now, skateboarding has been a subculture phenomenon for a few decades now. And yet, here's a skateboarding company called Nomad. They operate in the European markets. And their problem was that teenagers are extremely loyal to the hobby of skateboarding, but as they grow up, they start losing their consumers to more organized sport. So they said, how do we turn skateboarding into something so that I improve the customer lifetime value? And here's what they did. They literally made a global initiative to get it recognized as a sport instead of a hobby that it was always seen.
Even though skateboarding has significantly grown in popularity and requires incredible skill, for some reason it has always been considered a hobby more than a sport. That's why it has never been an Olympic sport. But this year, together with Tony Hawk and other organizations like the ISF, we made it our mission to set the score and put it right. Nomad, Spain's biggest skateboarding brand, decided to support the cause by lighting its own Olympic torch and taking it straight to Tokyo, where the 2020 Games will be held. Just like the official Olympic torch that travels from one city to the next one until it reaches the host city, our torch started its journey in Zaragoza, Spain, when the brand was born, and it ended up in Tokyo, traveling the only way possible from one skateboarder to the other. 8 skaters riding one board towards a common dream through Spain, France, Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, Russia, China, and of course, Japan. As the journey moved forward, skaters who opposed the Olympics started talking, and that helped the conversation grow around the world, letting a local brand lead a global debate. When the last skater finally reached Tokyo, the city joined the movement and the torch was lit. But our board had yet another stop to make, the International Olympic Committee in Switzerland. Over the course of the journey, supporters, haters, and the whole world could follow the adventure at MakeSkateOlympic.com, where our torchbearers also shared their experiences. This trip was made into a documentary that premiered in cinemas and has been seen by thousands of people already. And the media echoed the feat. But this epic journey was only completed on August 13th, the day the Olympic Committee finally made skateboarding an Olympic
The IOC approved 5 new sports for the 2020 Summer Games in Tokyo.
Because where else should skateboarding go but forward?
And unlike most boardroom conversations you would sit in, I have sat in a few. If the discussion talks about let's take our brand global and do a global campaign, the first barrier is how many $1 million it's going to cost. So guess what? This was not a multi-million-dollar campaign. It actually cost less than $1 million. And instead of telling skateboarders how great a skateboard I am, they actually did something every serious skateboarder would have loved to see, and earning fans for life. Now, here's the last bit, and the most important one, because this complicates the hell out of our lives. People are obsessed with qualifying our jobs for us. Again, tip of the iceberg, but the academic and the business and the expert and the consultant world collectively believes that you add a new prefix to the word of marketing and a new practice is born. I call it the prefix debris. Please don't fall prey to it. It's important to understand that all of these are now parts of what we do, but focusing on any one of them puts you in a classic 6 blind men and an elephant situation. Don't worry about what's going to be your Pinterest strategy or your Twitter strategy or your Snapchat strategy or your search strategy or your organic strategy or your programmatic strategy. You get the drift. Let's talk about what is it that the business is trying to achieve, and then pick and choose which ones of these do I actually need to deploy. These are just weapons in your arsenal. Don't be under pressure to use them as your shiny new toys all the time. Let's talk about what the purpose behind the activity is, rather than confuse the hell out of our living lights looking at all of these prefixes. So, long story short, can we really repurpose marketing? And that's where I think the job description of a CMO, a CEO, and every CXO in the company, it's not just marketing, the whole organization needs to pretty much come together around one mission. And you are going to hear a little about, or maybe a lot about, digital transformation in the rest of the day. And I think, here's my belief, I think every CXO in our companies today is doing a job with one purpose and one purpose only. This is really the business we are in. We are in the business of CX, which is customer experience. All we need to do is make sure that we start treating every single stakeholder of the organization as a customer. And if what we do is playing a little or a lot, depending on the day, of role in creating a delightful customer experience for one of the stakeholders, we're doing fine. So, and since we started with history, let me end with it. So while a few fine ladies and gentlemen were busy for 50 years trashing marketing, here's the man who's pretty much the last authority in management, let alone marketing. And he had said, because the purpose of business is to create a customer. The business enterprise has 2 and only 2 basic functions, marketing and innovation, because they produce results. Everything else is a cost. So as long as you're performing your marketing roles in a manner that you're delivering business results, forget about the life, death, obituary of writing. Let's get on with our jobs. Thank you so much.